Eagles?
No, I got him to produce the Eagles.
Let's hear
They
it.
were produced by, this is before I was in the band, but they were produced by Glenn Johns.
For decades, fans have wondered what really went on behind the scenes of the Eagles. Now at 77, Joe Walsh reveals the untold truth about Don Henley. Stories of clashes, loyalty, and a bond that shaped one of rock's most legendary bands. What really happened between them? Keep watching to find out. In 1975, Joe Walsh walked into the Eagles studio carrying a guitar riff bursting with energy, like a car racing down the highway. That riff would become Life in the Fast Lane, one of the defining songs of Hotel California. Few knew that Don Henley, the band's lead vocalist, initially resisted including it on the album. In a 2013 Rolling Stone interview, Walsh recalled, "Don watched me play that riff and said, 'That's too wild, Joe. It doesn't fit the Eagles' style.'" The disagreement lasted weeks, but it ultimately fueled the creation of a masterpiece. Walsh, with his free-spirited rock approach, wanted the song bold and unrestrained. Henley, seeking depth, saw a bigger story in the riff, a cautionary tale about a life of luxury and danger. Glenn Frey, co-founder of the Eagles, stepped in as mediator. Walsh remembered him saying, "This riff is gold. Let Joe do what he's great at, and then add your magic." After tense discussions, Henley agreed, crafting lyrics inspired by the band's 1970s lifestyle, endless parties, drugs, and fame. The result was a track that fused Walsh's roaring guitar with Henley's sharp vocals, creating a signature Eagles sound. The story didn't end there. In a 2016 Sirius XM interview, Walsh recalled that Henley later asked him to tone down the solo. Walsh sneaked in a few edgy notes, delighting audiences. That small act of rebellion captured the creative tension between Walsh and Henley, a clash that produced one of the Eagles' greatest hits and hinted at future conflicts. In the early 1990s, Joe Walsh hit a devastating low. Alcohol and drugs had taken over his life, turning the Eagles' guitar virtuoso into a shadow of his former self. He drifted away from the stage, from recording sessions, and even from the friends who had once been his closest allies. It was a dark period that threatened to end not only his career, but his very life. Amid that darkness, Don Henley, stern yet deeply loyal, stepped in. Henley refused to let Walsh spiral out of control. In a 2017 Washington Post interview, Walsh reflected, "Don and Glenn Frey saved me. Without them, I wouldn't be here today." By 1994, as the Eagles prepared for their Hell Freezes over reunion tour, Henley and Frey confronted Walsh with a clear ultimatum. Walsh recalled in History of the Eagles, 2013, "Don looked me straight in the eye and said, 'Joe, either you get sober or there's no place for you in the Eagles.' No negotiations, no exceptions." Henley went beyond words. He personally escorted Walsh to a rehab center in Arizona, where the long and grueling road to recovery began. Throughout the following months, Henley stayed in constant contact. Walsh shared in a 2016 CBS This Morning interview, "Don called me every week, asked how I was doing, but always reminded me, 'You have to do this yourself.'" Henley's tough love became the driving force that kept Walsh moving forward, even when the temptation to relapse loomed large. When Walsh finally completed the program, Henley's support culminated in a deeply personal gesture, a brand new Fender Teller accompanied by a handwritten note that read, "Welcome back, Joe. Now go play like yourself." Walsh recalled, "I cried when I read that." Don doesn't say much, but his actions speak volumes. Walsh's recovery was more than a triumphant return to the spotlight. It revealed the profoundly human side of Don Henley, a man often perceived as distant and perfectionistic. Glenn Frey once explained, "Don's tough because he cares. He wasn't going to let Joe destroy himself." For Walsh, Henley's unwavering support is a debt of gratitude he will carry for the rest of his life, a bond forged in crisis that goes far beyond music. On January 18, 2016, Glenn Frey, the heart and soul of the Eagles, passed away, leaving a void in the band that could never be replaced. Don Henley, Frey's close friend and longtime songwriting partner, confronted a grief he rarely allowed others to see. His sorrow kept mostly private, but deeply felt. Joe Walsh, who had shared decades of music and life with Henley, witnessed this rare vulnerability firsthand. In a 2018 Billboard interview, Walsh recounted, "I had never seen Don that fragile. He was sitting alone in the studio, listening to Desperado, with red eyes like he was saying goodbye to Glenn." The image revealed a side of Henley fans had never known, a man whose composure masked profound loss. In the weeks following Frey's funeral, Henley initially insisted that the Eagles could not continue. Walsh recalled a private meeting at Henley's Los Angeles home. "Don told Timothy B. Schmidt and me, without Glenn, the Eagles are just an empty shell." He didn't want to perform just for money or fame. Henley's stance reflected decades of loyalty to Frey, the friend and creative partner with whom he had penned classics like Hotel California and New Kid in Town. Yet Walsh and Schmidt refused to let the Eagles fade away. They gently suggested a way forward involving Frey's son, Deacon, in the band to carry on his father's legacy. In the updated history of the Eagles, 2016, Walsh recalled, "I told Don Glenn would want us to keep going, and Deacon is the way to honor him." Henley paused for a long moment before nodding, making the decision to continue the band an emotional and deeply considered choice. The weight of that decision became evident before their first show with Deacon at Classic West in 2017. Walsh shared a poignant detail. Henley pulled him aside backstage and said, "Joe, we have to do this for Glenn. We can't mess up." As recounted in a 2017 CBS Sunday Morning interview, that sense of responsibility pushed the band to work harder than ever, with Henley overseeing every detail from sound and lighting to stage direction to ensure Frey's legacy was honored. Henley's dedication didn't just preserve the Eagles. It elevated their performances into moving tributes. Timothy B. Schmidt noted in 2017, "Don brings his pain into the music. You can hear it when he sings, peaceful, easy feeling." Every note, every harmony became a testament to the bond between friends, the enduring power of the band, and the memory of the man who had held it all together. In 1980, the Eagles reached a breaking point. Internal conflicts had simmered for years, and Joe Walsh, known for his reckless behavior and free-spirited nature, became the focal point of Don Henley's frustration. The tension came to a head during the infamous Long Night in Wrong Beach concert in California, where arguments between band members erupted right on stage. Walsh recalled the chaos in the 2013 documentary History of the Eagles. Don and Glenn Frey were arguing right on stage. Nearly came to blows. "I was drunk and cracked a few stupid jokes, which only made things worse." Henley, trying to keep the band from falling apart, glared at me in fury. After the show, Henley confronted Walsh, calling him a saboteur and blaming his careless remarks to the press for widening the rift. Walsh admitted his mistakes, explaining in a 2016 Rolling Stone interview, "I was drunk a lot, saying random things to journalists about what was going on inside the Eagles." Walsh described the band during this period as like a family going through a divorce, a metaphor that highlighted the strain and emotional volatility. Henley, who felt the band's reputation was at stake, later remarked in History of the Eagles, "Joe wasn't malicious, but his lack of control made it nearly impossible for us to keep going." Despite the criticism, Walsh held no grudge and defended Henley. He acknowledged that the pressure from the massive success of Hotel California and nonstop touring had pushed the group to the edge. In a 2017 SiriusXM interview, Walsh explained, "Don carried the heaviest load. He was writing, singing, and trying to keep us from falling apart. I understand why he got mad." Even after the breakup, Henley maintained contact with Walsh, calling him occasionally without ever mentioning the band. "Don didn't say it out loud, but I knew he still cared about me," Walsh said. This turbulent period revealed the stark contrast between Henley's need for control and Walsh's spontaneous, free-spirited nature. Differences that over time laid the foundation for reconciliation. Timothy B. Schmidt, in a 2016 Billboard interview, summarized the dynamic well. Henley was tough on Walsh because he cared deeply about the band. They clashed often, but underneath it all, mutual respect endured. Both Joe Walsh and Don Henley had romantic connections with Stevie Nicks, the iconic Fleetwood Mac singer, which fueled persistent rumors of a rivalry between the Eagles members. Walsh, known for his candid humor, addressed the speculation in a 2019 classic rock interview. "I started dating Stevie in 1983, long after she and Don had broken up. I didn't steal Stevie from Don. People just like to exaggerate." He explained that Henley rarely mentioned Nicks in his presence, keeping his private life carefully guarded. Walsh recalled from Timothy B. Schmidt that Henley had been deeply heartbroken after his split with Nicks in the late 1970s. On The Howard Stern Show in 2018, Walsh added, "But Tim said Don had a tough time, especially when Stevie got pregnant and decided not to keep the baby." Henley's discretion earned Walsh's respect, and he never pressed for details. One memorable incident occurred in 1984 when Walsh, then dating Nicks, invited her to an Eagles concert in Los Angeles. Henley was displeased. Walsh remembered, "Don pulled me aside and said, 'Joe, don't complicate things. Focus on the show.'" The episode highlighted the contrast between Walsh's free-spirited, spontaneous nature and Henley's meticulous need for control. In History of the Eagles, 2013, Glenn Fry observed, "Don doesn't like personal drama getting in the way of business. Joe's the opposite. He lives like it's a party." Walsh confirmed there was no rivalry or resentment between him and Henley over Nicks. "Don and I never fought about Stevie. Relationships are private, and we respected that." Don Henley was more than the Eagles' lead vocalist. He was a strategic force guiding the band to become a timeless musical legend by the late 1970s. Henley's meticulous approach to songwriting and production shaped the Eagles' sound and ensured that each track carried emotional depth. Joe Walsh recalled in a 2019 Sirius XM interview, "Don could sit for hours tweaking one chorus, changing a single word because it didn't feel right emotionally. A prime example was Heartache Tonight." Henley and Glenn Fry labored to balance Walsh's upbeat, energetic guitar melodies with the song's lyrical and emotional nuance. Walsh later admitted, "Without Don, the song would have been just another rock track." Henley's commitment to detail and vision transformed simple riffs and melodies into enduring classics. Henley also acted as guardian of the Eagles' legacy. After the band's 1980 breakup, he famously rejected lucrative reunion offers, insisting the Eagles should be about art, not business. This unwavering dedication preserved the band's integrity and laid the foundation for the Hell Freezes Over reunion in 1994. Henley's perfectionism extended to live performances. Walsh remembered rehearsals in 2008 when Henley had the band run Lion Eyes repeatedly to ensure every harmony was flawless. Don Felder later commented in 2008, "Don sets the bar. Every note, every nuance was scrutinized, reflecting Henley's uncompromising standards." Yet, Henley's intensity was balanced by Walsh's humor and spontaneity. During a 2001 rehearsal, Walsh deliberately played a playful riff from Sweet Home Alabama to lighten the mood. Everyone burst out laughing except Don.